You want to know where to invest your money in real estate in Charlotte? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly where we can expect to see home prices increase the fastest. One of the methods that we use to determine this is to see where the city is investing their money, and that's what we're going to do in this video. Now, if this particular plan is approved, it will not only be the largest in Charlotte, but it will be the largest in the history of the state of North Carolina, costing roughly $25 billion over the next 30 years. Well, and so what is it? We're talking about the transit plan. Now, if you're familiar with Charlotte, we do have a blue line light rail system, and a lot of the real estate values have increased over the course of time when that was being built and developed. There are proposed plans to expand the light rail in many different directions. We're going to dive into that in just a little bit. Now, one of the things that I always say to anybody that's new to the area is that Charlotte is really a blank slate. It's a younger city, not only with the median age being roughly 34, but the infrastructure here, it's been pretty wide open. In fact, our city skyline has changed drastically in the past 8 to 10 years here. And so the transportation system really does have a big impact on how the city grows because it hasn't been built out yet entirely. And so we sort of follow some larger cities like Atlanta and learn from their mistakes, learn what has worked, etc. And we do that with other cities as well, but Atlanta being so close, we do tend to kind of, mirror that in some regards. So there is a major plan that is going through the approval process right now. In fact, it has reached some approval status with a few more stages to follow, and that's what I'll dive into a little bit more. So let's talk about the plan itself. And keep in mind that these plans do change. They evolve over time, and it really is something that is, nothing is solidified just yet, but having a good idea of the direction that the city and the surrounding towns are headed in, I think is really important, especially if you're going to be investing in real estate or just living in the area. So the new Red Line commuter rail would run from North Graham Street, which is right in Uptown, running all the way up through the north end of Mecklenburg County, potentially crossing over to Southern Iredell County, which is where Mooresville and Statesville are. I think that could be really big for all of the towns north of us, still in Mecklenburg County, but obviously too, if we do cross over Mooresville, Statesville, those areas I think would see continued growth. The extension of the existing Blue Line light rail to Pineville and Ballantyne. Trying to get to Ballantyne right now can be a real challenge, especially if you're going during those peak drive times. So I could just imagine that would free up an awful lot of traffic. At least that would be the hope. All right, another proposed improvement would be introducing of the Silver Line. Now, originally a light rail from the airport to Matthews, but the Matthews segment has been kind of put to the wayside. And that is one of the bigger news events here. So Matthews, for several years now, has really been expecting to have access via light rail on the Silver Line running alongside Independence, taking people to and from Uptown. That has since changed here, and the new plans are really focused on this red line going north. And so Matthews voted against this proposal, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. So one of the other details of the plan is they want to extend the Gold Line streetcar from down Beatty's Ford Road to the west and down Central Ave to the east. So that would expand in two different areas. They would also be looking to build a gateway station to serve as a transportation hub linking Amtrak, the Red Line, the Gold Line streetcars, and buses. And that would be on that northeastern side of the city where North Graham is, right on the edge of Uptown. And the plan would also call for increased funding for buses, roads, sidewalks, and greenways. As I just mentioned, a lot of these details are really to be determined, right? And so the actual stops that the light rail would make, nothing is set in stone yet. One of the newer proposals is to add a stop at Camp North End, which I personally think is a really good idea, just giving the younger demographics that tend to be moving in that area. I think it'd really do well there, and I think it would also help some of those surrounding neighborhoods like Druid Hills or et cetera kind of really help to flourish and take off. Another revision here would include relocating a couple of stations. For example, the residents are suggesting moving the DeRidda station closer to the Sugar Creek Road area. So those sorts of things definitely need to be worked out, finalized, and there are a lot of nuances and logistics, I'm sure, that are involved in that. This next change here is something that I didn't really know about before. It's called the Seam Trail Greenway, and it would be a 60-mile walking and biking path from Pineville to Statesville, and it may not align exactly with the rail line, but that would be, I think, a huge sort of bonus or plus or, a really good addition to this. So a little bit of history on the existing Blue Line light rail. They do have a greenway walking trail. Essentially, it's a paved path that runs alongside the south end area. And from my understanding, they didn't really plan that as to be anything or be a part of it, but it ended up almost a main feature of it, because now you have everybody walking alongside the light rail. There's a lot of retail and businesses that just are there. It's an extremely walkable area. So you have people on scooters and bikes and, you name it. Like, you can walk your pet out there, just enjoy the weather. I think it really brings people together. There's a farmer's market out there, like, you name it. It's a really lively thing to do. And I can just imagine that being in other areas of Charlotte and how those surrounding neighborhoods would really kind of flourish and take off. I think it would just be really great for the area in general. All right, another proposed plan here would be to have the red line accommodate bikes. So basically have bike racks. That would be pretty awesome as well. I would imagine it's pretty simple to add that. That would be a wider radius where you could live within the light rail to be able to commute to it and take that to and from work. Just see that as a plus. The train staffing, they would have both a conductor and an engineer. The red line would be a single track. It's a 22-mile stretch. Now, this would cost roughly $25 billion over the next 30 years. And I would imagine that number will just increase over time. And the way that they would do this is through a 1% sales tax, through a 1% sales tax increase in Mecklenburg County. They would take it from 7.25% up to 8.25%. And that would raise a little over $19 billion with an additional from federal grants and fair revenue, and it would be the largest project in the history of North Carolina. Now, what is really interesting is that 30% of the revenue would really be coming from people who don't even live here. So like anybody that visits, if they're gonna stay here, spend money, it's a sales tax, they would be contributing to that. And so they're projecting that roughly 30% of the revenue, needed to fund this would be coming from people that are just visiting here. So a 1% sales tax increase for the average consumer, they are estimating that this would cost roughly, call it $300 more per year. And that's based off of the average person spending roughly $22,000 on items that would incur a sales tax. So right now, $22,000 per year costs roughly $1,595, and that would increase to $1,815. It's actually less than $300. So what is that, like $220? So let's say it's $300 a year. I think that that's a great investment, personally. Maybe I'm biased on this, I don't know, but that sounds like a really good plan to me, with the impact that I think it could have, potentially freeing up some of the congestion on the roads, but also I think just driving some of these areas a little bit further outside the city in terms of just being, attractive, fun places to live that give people the amenities that you have, once you're right into the city of Charlotte. I think if we could expand that to people that live in some of these more suburban areas, I think it's just a really big win for the city. So the money would be spent right now. The plan is 40% for roads, 40% for the rail, and 20% for buses. So Mecklenburg County, we have the city of Charlotte and then 6 other towns within Mecklenburg County. We have Cornelius, Davidson, Huntersville, Matthews, Mint Hill, and Pineville. And so each one of these municipalities would receive X amount based off of their size and other details. Now, if this sales tax proposal is approved, it will generate roughly $140 million for road improvement. And that is a substantial amount of money. And what they've done is they've talked to each of these towns within Mecklenburg County, basically trying to get an idea of, hey, where would you spend the money? Do you like the plan? Overall, 5 out of the 6 towns love the idea, with the only group being Matthews. The Matthews is against this, but all of, 5, the other 5 are for it. Really just seeing the amount of funding that they'll get for road improvement is really substantial. And so even if they didn't put a light rail in, these areas would still benefit by having the money to improve their roads. So Cornelius would receive about $5.75 million, which is 15% of its current annual budget. Their representative said, "I cannot say enough. There's not enough hyperbole to cover. It's a game changer for road funding. I've never seen anything like this in my career." Pretty positive statement. Davidson would receive an estimated $3.125 million. They have not come out and said, hey, where they would spend their money. Huntersville would receive $10 to $12 million, which is 10% of its annual budget. The town manager, Anthony Roberts, suggested to the Huntersville commissioners that it could be used for road resurfacing. Now, Huntersville representatives have expressed that they are not convinced that if the plan is approved, that Charlotte will follow through and build the red line. However, they've also said that, hey, even if they don't do it, we are still on board. We are good with the fact that we're going to receive so much funding for road improvement. And so that's good to hear. However, it never really occurred to me that the plan could get approved, yet for some reason the city of Charlotte not fulfilled the obligation to actually build the red line. I'm sure there's obviously a lot of details involved in that process, but it was pretty interesting to read that. The town of Matthews, they would receive less than $5 million, and they didn't really want to speculate on where they would put the money. They basically just said, hey, $5 million isn't enough to move the needle, so to speak. And again, they're against this plan. Mint Hill, they would receive roughly $6 million, which is 25% of their current annual budget. They have some safety measures at Highway 51 and 485 and at the intersection of 51 and 218. And the town manager, Brian Welch, says, in conversations with my mayor and board members, the road money is probably the biggest deal for us. We are supportive of regional transit. That money coming back to the roads in Mint Hill is a huge deal. And so Mint Hill, from a geographical standpoint, they would really not benefit at all from a light rail, at least the current plans, because they are far to the east. So the light rail, there's really no plans for it to go to Mint Hill. These other areas, so Pineville, Huntersville, Davidson, Cornelius, they're all projected to have stops for the light rail. So pretty interesting to hear Mint Hill basically say, hey, listen, don't worry about us. We're good with it. We just want the road, funding, and we'll be happy, basically. All right, Pineville, they would receive an estimated $1.72 million. Possible uses are right-of-way acquisition for future road expansions and the expansion of Polk Street and upgrading intersections on Johnston Road. Right now, the transit plan is really managed primarily by the Charlotte area transit system, and they do have some regional input, but it's pretty limited. And so if this new plan is passed, a new 27-member transit authority team will oversee the light rail development, and the local municipalities will manage their own road funding. All right, so the current status of this, two things happened in September of this year. They approved the $91 million purchase of the O-line tracks from Norfolk Southern. That was actually what was holding this up previously. Norfolk Southern has the rail line there. They previously did not want to sell it. They have changed their minds basically and have agreed to close on the sale. The plan allocates $74 million for the purchase of the 22-mile track, with an additional $17 million to go towards acquiring 1.6 acres of land along Graham Street for the future Gateway Station. And the second thing that happened in September is that the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, and 5 out of the 6 towns that we just discussed passed their resolutions to advance the draft legislation to the North Carolina General Assembly. So basically what will happen is the North Carolina General Assembly will need to review this. There was initially a thought that they would be able to do it in November, but that's not going to happen. It'll be sometime in 2025. And if it passes through them, then we would, as citizens, be able to vote on it at some point. And so those are the next steps in this. And it'll be interesting to see input from the community. What do you think? If you are living here now, or even if not, even if you're not in the area, would you agree to a 1% sales tax increase for this type of project? Now, best case scenario is that if everything goes as planned, the red line would be open to the public as early as 2034. We still have 9 years from now. But these things are really big for areas. And I know that just leading up to these sort of major projects, that developers, people who invest in real estate, professional investors, they like to get in early. So let me know your thoughts. Put your comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And until then, I hope you're having a great day. I'm Chris Phillips with the HomeWise Group in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.